Hello, my name is Victor Valenti and I work for GIZ in the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, also known as TUMI. I scheduled an online discussion today with Simone Costa, who is Mobility Advisor at the Civil House of Rio de Janeiro City, and Marcos Tognozzi, Advisor at Rio City Hall Operations Center. Before their presentation, I'd like to give a little background information on Rio de Janeiro City. Rio is one of the 20 most populated cities on our planet and has the second busiest rapid bus transit network when considering ridership. The metropolitan area of Rio counts around 13 million people, of which almost 2 million use the public transport system every day to get to Rio. Currently, Rio is heading the numbers of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Latin America. So, to understand what has been done so far to hinder the spread of the pandemic, Simone and Marcos will present the impacts of COVID in the urban mobility systems of the metropolitan area of Rio. To know what a challenged city like Rio is doing and what is working out well is a very relevant example for other cities that might be facing similar situations. Without further ado, I would like to warmly welcome Simone and Marcos and thank you in advance for taking time to talk to us. Please, the screen and the mouse are yours. And now I will hit my camera. Marcos, please feel free to start.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank Simone as well. She's going to share this presentation with me. And today, I'll ask Sarah Simone's help in order to step the slides. So today, we're going to talk about the impacts on the urban mobility of Rio de Janeiro on the metropolitan area, according to the mobility system. So please, next slide, Simone. Well, it's me and Marcos Tognozzi. Thanks for the presentation by Victor and Simone Costa as well. And we'll show this big screen here. We have two pictures. This is the metropolitan area of Rio de Janeiro. Particularly Rio is in the around the yellow color on the left map. So to see the right map here, we can see that as much red we have in the map shows that it's a low income area on Rio de Janeiro. As it goes further to the seashore of Rio de Janeiro, goes for green, it's a middle income area, and near the shore area of Rio de Janeiro, which is in blue color, it's an area with higher income. As well, we have the greatest amount of jobs and service of the city located. And some facts that we need to talk about here is that Rio de Janeiro city has almost 6.4 million inhabitants, but this metropolitan area, we're talking about 12 million inhabitants. And all of this corresponds to 74% of population of the state. And it's very important to show in the left map that our structural network of Rio de Janeiro consists basically by trains that goes from downtown area of Rio de Janeiro to north parts and outer cities, and subway system around the north and south parts and downtown area of Rio de Janeiro. As well, BRTs go around the area of Rio de Janeiro. So a very important number to have in mind that in general, people in the metropolitan area of Rio de Janeiro, they spend more than 1 hour every day to go to work. It's a big city. Please, next slide, Simone. Well, as a great opportunity we had during this pandemic period, this quarantine time, we developed a panel, which is a data monitoring panel. What this panel stands for? It's a panel that we have informations daily from the transport operators, from the bike share system of Rio de Janeiro, from the app of the taxi service of Rio de Janeiro. As well, we combine this information with data collected from the toll expressway roads of Rio de Janeiro. We have two main expressway roads here that the drivers pay toll to drive through them. And we combine it with the accidents registered on our commando panel and the traffic flow. So I apologize, all this panel is in Portuguese, but I'm going to help you. We can show here, with the help of Simone's arrow in the screen, we have, in general, in Rio de Janeiro, in the weekdays, we are talking about less 73% of passengers riding on buses, trains, light rail trams, and the subway system of Rio de Janeiro. In average, we're talking about less 73%. About the toll roads of Rio de Janeiro, we're talking about less 47% of traffic flow going through the toll area. And about accidents, according to the traffic reduction as well, we have registered less 44% of accidents on the streets of Rio de Janeiro. But in general, the traffic flow of the streets of Rio de Janeiro were reduced more than 90%. We are reaching about 93% of reduction of cars, motorcycles, trucks, buses, and everything together. All this data, we're talking about traffic here. It's a partnership that the Rio Operations Center has with Waze. So we collect data from them, and we compare the time before the pandemic, just a week before the quarantine in Rio de Janeiro, and then we compare for each week that we're going for ahead. So please, next slide. Well, the city and the state of Rio de Janeiro, it's very important to mention that the city is called Rio de Janeiro, but for the ones who don't know here, the state of Rio de Janeiro is also called Rio de Janeiro as well. And both of them, the city government and the state government, they adopted measures from March to April until May. And we're talking about the home office, which was established for many people who used to go every day to work. The beaches of the Rio de Janeiro were restricted, and so nobody's allowed to walk or go to the sand area or to the inside water. School classes were suspended. We had reschedule, an adjustment of the service in Rio de Janeiro. This reschedule was very important to avoid the crowds on buses and trains. So the time were established by decree, and things start from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. We have different times for each kind of important sector of the city going on. Restaurants were restricted. They were only allowed to have the delivery service. Pubs and bars in Rio de Janeiro, they were shut, they were closed. They were only allowed to sell food by the delivery service. And all the fitness centers, clubs, and gym houses of Rio de Janeiro, they were closed to avoid the crowds. In Rio de Janeiro, we had the influenza vaccination, the flu. And one thing we did, we anticipated this calendar, and we started to give the vaccination for the drivers inside the car. So people go with the cars to the vaccination area, and they don't need to step out of the car and then don't get crowded inside any clinic. We have the delivery services. They were stimulated. We have already had this in the city. It was very widespread, and now it was stimulated to avoid people going around to buy food. So they received this at their house or offices. The facial masks, in the beginning, they were a recommendation on the public transport and streets. Further ahead, we're going to see that the facial masks are now mandatory in the Rio de Janeiro metropolitan area. As well, the city gave, for the public health professionals, they gave an exemption for the tariffs and the transport to make things easier for them to ride around the city. This next slide. Well, we had to implement here in Rio de Janeiro, several stations of the BRT, trains, and subway were closed, and many of them we have to put transport control, we had to put access control for the transport. So the city authorities controlled who could board the trains and subways and ferry boats of Rio de Janeiro according what they are going to do. If you're people who work for the public health, work in the health area or in the security area, well, we have a list of essential things to do, of essential services, And this control was made before boarding to avoid people taking trains, subways to go around the town without no purpose. The fleet of the buses of Rio de Janeiro, they had a reduction. And as well, we had to put a capacity limitation. So it's not allowed to travel standing on the buses, or the buses are not allowed to carry more than 50% of the capacity of passengers inside. Well, several services of Rio de Janeiro were restricted, and intercity buses. This is very important to mention that there's intercity buses that come from metropolitan area. They were all suspended to go to this city, but we remained with the trains, ferries, and subway to go inside the city. Rio de Janeiro, as a core business district of this metropolitan area, had to provide a shuttle service. So we send buses every day to go to other cities to bring our staff from the health and security areas to work every day. As well, finally, here we have a tram line in Rio de Janeiro that goes in a touristic area called Santa Teresa. The tram was suspended to avoid tourist movement inside that area. So Simone is going to help me to further on keep on this presentation. Please, Simone.
So you have this unit. My name is Simone. I work for Civil House of Rio de Janeiro and support the SIMU activity, which is a mobility center for human mobility inside operational center of Rio de Janeiro. So here, as we have this group of concessionaires and public officials to plan and to discuss some improvements in the public transport, we use this group to see what to discuss what we'll do during quarantine and what we'll do for the reopening. That we know that the demand will be affected for a long time, and we need to take some measures to see how we are going to work during this period. So here we have, so we organized this kind of meeting. We are talking about 85 people, 30 institutions. That it was a webinar meeting that we provided during this quarantine time, and we discussed some main topics. So we have some agenda about the restrictions that we have in the transport mode. So we want to show them also what was going on in all the cities in the world, as these cities are in the more advanced period in the COVID pandemic. We also highlight what was going on with our vulnerable people, and we discuss. We want to see the integrated options that we have, the integrated initiatives that we could improve together. And the point is, we need to discuss the difficulties of the sector, because all the operators and also the public authorities, they have some difficulties to deal with that. So as Marcos said, our context is very challenging for transport in everyday life, and in the pandemic, it's much more challenging. And we need to identify opportunities for the new normal, and also to also we have a problem of people try to avoid public transport due to the fear of contagion. So we need to discuss this kind of things to see how we are going to move on together. And here, when all the operators could discuss what they were already doing, what were the main initiatives that they had. So all of them try to educate the users how to behave in the public transport, to avoid crowds, to take care of themselves. And also they have cleaning protocol. All the concessionaires already have some cleaning and sanitizing protocol. And in the beginning, March, the facial masks were not. mandatory for the population, but all of them stimulates the collaborators to use. So all of these, everybody was doing, and now even the users has to use masks. And also we have each operators had different initiatives, and in some way we mapped all these initiatives that were already taken during this period. And then when we see, we also show them the benchmarks of other cities and try to identify which ones are more could be used in our context. And here we have some results of that. More or less half of them understands as a priority that masks and the opening service time adjustment is very important. It's something that we need to improve because we need to avoid crowds in our public transport system, and we have a problem. Really, people come from other cities in the metropolitan region to the jobs in the center of Rio de Janeiro. So cleaning we need to improve. Advertisement campaign is also important. Try to restrict the seat and the occupancy control in the bus. So this kind of measure, they understand that they could do, and as you can see, all these measures are regarding public transport itself and the operators itself. But then when you go to and see, they see some barriers, and that's why we discuss this kind of thing, because we need to, they need the support of the public authority. So that's why this kind of question was important, that it was done, because what public authorities can do, it's a decree or it's a human resources support. See what we could do about it. It was important to identify. And then when we see, when we increase the range of priorities, we could see that we have also some change of behavior. And we see that the problem of try to avoid the cars, the wave of cars after pandemics, it's also a worry that they have. So we can see that car-free zones, cycle routes are in the like a positive campaign. It's also it's a concern that they have to make people continue to use public transport, of course, in another way, in another with this new normal, but guarantee quality and not be contagious there. And see, here also we map some initiatives from short-term, medium-term, and long-term. In the short term, they understand that that the expansion of the cycle routes could be implemented in a short term. This kind of multi-service points, they understand we have some big stations that are really crowded, and we need to offer some kind of information, some kind of to the population that use this kind of thing. The restrictions in the bus and the seats also, it must be done. And in the medium term, they understand that we could formulate together revision in service of opening hours, because we need to avoid peak. If we want to talk about reopening, we need to make it, we cannot have crowds anymore. So we need to do it with public authorities. And also we have some parts of the city where the sidewalks are not very wide, and we need to take care of that, because we need to maintain social distance. And here, and also maintain this kind of initiatives in the long term. And here the challenges. We have a lot of challenges, as you can see. So here we have a financial a problem of financing, because in the city of Rio de Janeiro, we don't have subsidy. And to support this kind of, it's also based on the fare of the user. And to support this operation for more than a year, So they highlight that they need some support. They need to review contracts because the pattern of operation will change, and they need to discuss this thing together with the public authority. There is some movement in the state level to address this issue, but they also, from the city concessionaires and the state concessionaires, also highlighted that. Things about the data integration, because public transport is also a measure of social distance, and we need to keep the best information that we have available to take good decisions. And the third part is about a lot of concessionaires and the public authorities express the thing about migration for private transport. So in our case, it's cars and motors. And we want to, everybody is afraid of this wave. And they want to, so of course, it's not, the concessionaires alone cannot deal with that. They need the public authority support and the traffic engineers to help on that. So they highlight this for this kind of discussion keep on going with other sectors in the urban mobility of the city. And that's it. Is it too long, Victor?
No, it was perfect. I'm just turning on my camera. No,
Okay.
it was perfect. Thank you very much. Now, if you agree, we could do a little bit discussion here on the presentation, which is very rich and to understand, for me at least, that I'm Brazilian as well, even though we are everyone talking English. I'm Brazilian as well, and I used to live in Rio for 6 years. So I was reading a bit about what is going on in Rio right now and with the presentation as well. As you mentioned, Rio is a huge city with a really big metropolitan area. And the pandemic is showing us that the necessity of decentralizing employment, right? And centralizing housing, offering service in the peripheries of metropolitan areas, like Rio, for example. Do you think the actual scenario can contribute to a major future change in the urban mobility system of Rio? You see any light in the end of the tunnel?
So the point of decentralizing housing and the jobs, it was also a problem. So all the plans that we have also try to address this issue. And I think the pandemic will make faster some projects to centralize housing in the Rio de Janeiro. So we have a good and one example that that's not didn't improve much, but it's a route that's Porto Maravilha. There is an effort to make downtown Rio de Janeiro a place to also to live and all of your activities. And I think that it could be a great push for this kind of projects, but it's this program is mapped in every plan that we have, the master plan of the city, master plan of the state. Now we have the sustainable plan of the Rio de Janeiro, so it's also a problem. But I think now with the pandemic, we can really have projects to improve this kind of thing.
I don't know if you, Marcos, want to comment on that or.
Not for this time. Let's keep on the discussion.
Okay. So yeah, even before the pandemic, the operation of urban transport fleet, I'm talking about bus, but I don't know about the other, because in Rio you have the train, you have the metro, but the fleet in the metropolitan region was already registered a deficit of 2,000 vehicles, according to Casa Fluminense. With Corona, there was a massive drop in the number of passengers, and you showed that. but also the number of circulating vehicles was reduced. At least that's what I understood. Could you give us more detail on how is the operation scheme and the number of circulating fleets being defined?
Or I think
How
I
is
can
being
go ahead
defined?
with
Yes. Okay.
Well, in fact, we had a major reduction of the fleet of Rio de Janeiro. Numbers of Casa Fluminense, they're correct. It was very huge number. But on the other hand, we had a increase of the speed of the commercial speeds of the buses of Rio de Janeiro. So they're performing more trips than they averagely could do. The speed of our bus corridors, our open corridors, are very high. According, there are no cars on streets, there are no traffic jams. So this makes the fleet more effort. In parallel, we can say that the structural network of Rio de Janeiro had not so much reduction as the buses had. Trains, they remained with their fleets on track, and so they added even more trips for the train service of Rio de Janeiro in order to let the occupancy of trains very low. The subway system had also a very huge drop, but they remained with the average interval of the subway in the peak hour. The light rail tram of Rio de Janeiro, which is on downtown area, it's less crowded, but they remained with the operation as always happened. So for one side, we have the reduction of buses, but we remain in with the trains, the subway, and the light rail trams. And the BRT, according to the operator, he remained with many buses for the BRT service, according to the demand of passenger carrying. So they did not reduce it as much as other transports, according to the operator's speech we had in the previous meeting we had this month.
Okay.
And the scheme, I can say this is according to the Transport Department of Rio de Janeiro, which is not today here in this presentation, but they have several decrees which are established by the mayor and by the Transport Authority of Rio de Janeiro, showing that the amount of reduction allowed and the amount of the service which were allowed to continue running on the BRT, some other were suspended. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, follow up on this question. The stations with high demand, the intervals between trips have been reduced as well. And I saw that you have starting earlier to the operations, so you don't have these agglomerations. But also, stations with low passenger demand are temporarily closed, also to avoid that people use this and go there. Can you say already that this has been an effective measure, or how are you monitoring it? And if you have any feedback from the population so far about this new way of operating, with the stations having like the intervals between the trips in some stations being smaller, and also some stations temporarily closed. If you have any comment from that.
So I can start. So during March, that was our first month of quarantine, there were a lot of decrees and a lot of effort from public authorities to try to make people avoid the streets, really to implement the quarantine. So all the decrees that we show, it was a great effort to make people stay at home. So of course, the authorities, we could see in our meeting that they are aware that it's a discomfort. It's not comfortable for the users, mainly the essential workers that need to go to their work every day to find a station that is closed. But it was also a way to avoid people to go to the streets, to use the public transport in an unnecessary reason. So they are monitoring. So it is, as you can see, if someone wants to see, every week they have new decrees, new resolutions to try to fix, and to sometimes are opened, and sometimes are closed, sometimes they open. So we have a new hospital, campaign hospital, and they have to open a station. So that's something that they are dealing with a lot of focus, and try to. It's impossible to avoid the problems of the population, but as we are in this exception period, they are trying to fix the problems as they face.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned also this huge passenger drop has many companies are suffering enormous income losses and as you also mentioned, I think there is no subsidy in Rio. So are there solutions being designed to ensure the continuity of the services now and after the pandemic? Before, I mean, the operation really, some companies get bankrupt. And in a nutshell, how does the Rio tariff system work? If you could, in a nutshell, explain a bit.
I think I can handle this, Simone and Vitor. Well, the tariff of Rio de Janeiro, the tariff system of Rio de Janeiro, basically is supported by passengers collected, which passenger who pays the tariff. So the major part of the transport of Rio de Janeiro does not have subsidy. So the city buses don't have subsidy here in Rio de Janeiro. And the state concessions, which are talking about the trains, the intercity buses, the subway, and the ferries, they have some part of subsidy from the state, but this subsidy is very restricted to people who has lower income and need to take more than two transport on the trip. So the state goes and put some money together with when the person pays the fare. So the state goes there and put some more as a subsidy. Although it's a major worry here from all the operators, they have had a massive drop on their revenue. I think, well, it's my personal opinion, this is a very important moment to rediscuss the finance of all the transport system of a city, which I consider cannot be only by the people who pays the tariffs, but be another sources to handle this. And well, there are some discussions on the state assembly and also the federal government about how they're going to provide some kind of subsidy or to keep on the operation. In the early beginning as well, the mayor also has started a group to analyze some kind of subsidy for the fuel service of the bus of Rio de Janeiro. I think that this basically it's what's happening now, but I think it's an important issue to be discussed from this moment ahead. And we need experts for that.
Okay, thanks. Well, to close, what do you think will be the main changes in urban mobility in Rio and the metropolitan region after the pandemic? You've been talking in this group, and you showed us some solutions that goes beyond the urban mobility, so to say. But what I would be like, if you could think like, what would be wishful to have change after the pandemic?
So I can try this one. So during the seminar, it was the meeting that we had, it was very interesting because all the operators say about the peaks. So it's impossible to maintain. It cannot. They say it's not possible that we deal with this the peak that we have. So we have more than 6 passengers per square meter, and it cannot be a normal operation. So they are eager to discuss the opening hours of the service, because it cannot be the new norm. And of course, in a short term, we are not going to have a big changes in the housing and the jobs and the location of that. So really, they are in the, of course, in the sector of public transport. They're not talking about traffic. They're not talking about cycle routes. But regarding public transport, they say they are eager to discuss the opening hours of the service, because they say we have seats all over the day. We don't need to make everybody move in crowds in just 2 hours a day. We cannot continue on that solution. Actually, we cannot continue on that.
Thanks. Well, I don't know if you want to add something, make any comment. I would like, first of all, to thank you again for the time you took to translate the presentation, also for the work that you're having in a Friday with a lot of work for sure. And thank you very much for your time. And please feel free to give the last words.
I would like to thank you for your initiative. It was very nice to, I think, to discuss this kind of thing, because we are in one of the 12 million metropolitan region. We have inequality in metropolitan regions, so we have challenges in transportation. So the people of low income, really, they go more than 60 kilometers from their jobs. Our city, there is a lot of mountains, so we have a challenging geography, challenge to move these people. So we are not dense. People are not together here, really. We face a lot of challenges, and it's important that we see all these initiatives of sustainable mobility, but we have to put in our context, and we have a lot of challenges. So that's important that we could also show the challenge that we have and how we are dealing with that, how we are discussing with our civil society, with our operators, with also the public authorities. Of course, we don't agree at the time, of course, but we try to see the things that we agree, and we can move on regarding our limits. And it's important. I think it was a great effort that all these institutions are doing together.
Yes. Marcos, you wanna make any comment?
No, thank you. I'm
fine. No, I would like also to invite you guys to participate or to take a look at the Tumi TV event that will take place on the 26th of May, next week, where this video will be streamed as well. And I will be in touch, because I think it's important to exchange this information and keep in touch and see how we could somehow support. And also Germany had also some examples of things that are happening here that I think it's important to keep in touch. And as you said, there was a road here, be safe. I hope you all be safe. And yes, congratulations for the work that you're doing. And we keep in touch. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Vitor.
Bye-bye.